So this webinar is called How to Eliminate Setup and Maintenance on Your Headless Browser Fleet for Web Scraping. You have myself, Daniel Cave, Head of Product Marketing at Zyte, and I've been scraping for 13 years on and off, give or take, back from the good old days of visual web scrapers like Kimono and Import.io, right the way through to the latest generation of AI-powered scraping, which is super exciting at the moment. I'll be guiding you through the intro of this call, where we look a little bit into sort of the basics of headless browsing. We'll look at some headless browsing infrastructure, and I'll give you some guidance on how you can eliminate that setup and maintenance that you're probably going to be experiencing. And then we've got Fernando on the call. He's a technical team lead at Zyte. What that means is he runs the teams who deliver data to our clients. At Zyte, we have both a technology offering, the API we're going to be talking to you about later today, as well as a services offering where if people just want us to do the scraping for them, we will do that. And Fernando leads some of those teams. So he's a font of knowledge on all things delivery at high scale, high quality. And so we're really lucky to have him today. Just so we all know, I think we've already covered this, but we are recording, so it'll be available. The Q&A is open, so as we go along, please drop questions into there or into the chat. We'll try and answer those at the end or as we go along. And we do have a Discord server, of course, where you're welcome to join. We've got, I think there's about 1,500 people in there, developers, designers, legal people, people from all walks of life. So go in there and get the latest webinar updates and workshops and stuff. We'll be glad to have you. Again, I'm sure we'll drop the link in the chat. Okay. The host has asked you to start your video. Hi. Yes, hello. So what I want to do is to start off this webinar with just having a very quick look at Headless Browser 101. I'm aware that we might have some people who are brand new to headless browsers and looking to get involved in using them, and we have other people who are maybe a little bit more experienced. So if you are more experienced, please bear with us while I just go through this. Okay, so why do you need headless browsers? Well, it's a great question, because sometimes basically we can't see or get to the data we need to unless we have a full browser. So some of that data might not be accessible without a browser. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what a request looks like with a browser and without a browser, well, the other way around. Okay, so browserless versus browser full. So this is what we'd call a curl type request. It's a very simple, cheap file exchange, no processing time, very little compute required. You simply request a file from a server, and the server returns that file. In our case, in the web scraping world, that will be requesting the HTML of a page, and the server simply returns it, and there's nothing in between. Okay, very simple, very cheap. Now, if we look at a browser-full web scraping experience, we can see there's a little bit more to it. So when you request a URL, we are going to have an instance of a browser that loads that page and makes that request and loads the page. Okay, and then on load, it's going to execute any JavaScript, download any CSS files, images, all that sort of stuff, and then that will be what you get back in your requests. Okay, so it's going to respond with rendered HTML, network traffic, cookies, images, CSS. So that you can get access to the content that's maybe written to the page using JavaScript or anything like that. Or if you want to take a screenshot, again, you need a browser to load the page, to render it so you can see what it looks like and grab what's in the viewport. Okay. Now, there is an extra step to that where you might want to perform actions. So if you want to click a button, to scroll down, to type in a search field, if you want to mimic any of those human-computer interactions, you're going to need a browser to perform them. Obviously, you'll script them remotely, and then it will perform them for you. But what that looks like is requesting a URL, on load, you get the HTML. You want your browser to perform an action, and often using a system called Ajax, it will go away, get some data from a server, and return it to the page, update the page, and then at that point, we want to return the data so we can parse and get the data out that we want. A good example might be a store locator where you want to type in your postcode, and it's a single page app, and You type your postcode in, and then it returns the data, and that's what you want to scrape. Okay. Loads of great tools for this, loads of good free options, and we'll discuss the meaning of free in a moment. But there's a great community support. There's a lot of open source stuff out there, Zombie.js, Selenium, Puppeteer, Playwright. These are all great options, loads of support, loads of articles out there. And you can use these to build your own infrastructure. So we'll get into how to do that. But we should know why, like when you should use these tools, because that's important. And it's the opinion of myself and a lot of people who talk about best practice that you should really be using a headless browser as a last resort, really. So we're talking about building an infrastructure for these things, but we're also saying, you know, unless it's quicker and cheaper to build your query to get the data using a headless browser, you really shouldn't be doing it unless budget doesn't matter. And that's because it's about 30 times the cost per request to actually use a headless browser to get the data. So we want to be avoiding that at all costs. But when you might want to use it is if you need screenshots, you obviously have to have a browser, no viewport, and you screenshot. Or if you want to mimic human-computer interaction that you can't do any other way. If you absolutely have to render JavaScript for things like network intercept, then there are scenarios where you 100% do need a browser. They're few and far between, but they are important when you have to do them. And sometimes actually you want to use a headless browser just to help with unblocking websites to help solve a ban. Some anti-bot systems are, of course, looking at your browser profile with what we call a browser fingerprint to see if you are a real human or whether you're a bot trying to scrape their site. So that's another good scenario where you might want to use them. Don't use them when the cost per requests matter, particularly at scale. We talk a lot about scale. If you're doing 1 billion requests, adding 30 times the cost to that is obviously not great. If you can use curl style requests to go directly to JSON, sometimes that's a great way to get around this. And also like not using them when you could be, not having to deal with the DevOps required. Okay, so when we're talking about the DIY infra, so if you're going to build an in-house solution for this, things you have to consider: hosting costs, fingerprinting, stealth setup and plugins. Puppeteer has a great stealth plugin. Integration, DevOps, maintenance costs, understanding anti-bots, building and fallbacks and escalating waterfalls for retries for different browser stacks, and all the plumbing for your spiders, proxy sessions, actions. Now, and I'll show you what I mean by all of this. And the idea is to show you that it can start quite simple, but it can get very complicated very quickly. So a typical infra might look like you've got your spiders, potentially written in Scrapy, that are making requests that go through a computer that's running a browser. And then that browser might, well, most likely use a proxy, and it will return the data to you. What you've got to do in this case, of course, is managing the fingerprints, the stealth plugins. You've got to orchestrate that machine and make sure you're doing browser rotation. Make sure you're managing sessions, so you use the same browser with the same IP if you need to do session-based scraping. And of course, you need to look at the proxy use. Okay, but stepping up a level, we see it starts getting really complicated really fast. So what you're seeing here is a typical mid-tier headless browser setup, where you've got your spiders on the left, of course, making requests. And then you've got multiple machines, potentially in the cloud, potentially on-premise, potentially just bare metal servers you've got yourself. But because you've got lots of servers, lots of computers, lots of browsers, you need to start thinking about your browser infrastructure layer and how you're going to scale that up, scale that down. Are you going to use Docker, AWS, Datadog to do the monitoring? And again, you've got to think about how you're managing sessions, rotating stuff. But now you have to think about scaling up, scaling down, managing your bandwidth if you're doing higher scale of stuff. Security, then you've got to deal with invoicing, budgeting, SLAs, planning your budget ahead of time, and all that sort of thing. But at the end of this, what you see is you do some monitoring and reporting, and that should be telling your spider fleet whether you've had a success or a failure with a particular combination of proxy and browser. Okay, then if that doesn't work, you need a system to reroute through, try again with a different combination, and that will hopefully improve your success rates. Then as we get another level higher, up to the professional stuff, We just have to start thinking about using load balancers, using Kubernetes or Kubernetes, however. There's lots of different pronunciations out there to manage multiple browser stacks. And at this point, you're getting to the level where you need DevOps engineers to maintain all of this stuff, or to use very expensive AWS solutions. But in this scenario, you might get away with one developer spending a lot of time. When you get to this sort of scale, you start thinking maybe it's 1, 2 full-time employees to do this. The DevOps of monitoring, reporting, maintenance, all that stuff. Okay, and this is kind of how a lot of developers tell me they feel about this. It starts off quite easy and they think, okay, I'm going to build my solution in-house. And after a while, they realize it's actually pretty hard because you're working in a dynamic environment where the empty bot's constantly changing, the web's constantly changing, and you have changing requirements over time. So I was telling you all that so that we can talk about how to eliminate it, okay? Particularly setup and maintenance on your headless browser infrastructure. Well, that looks a little bit like this. Perhaps unsurprisingly for a Zyte webinar, we suggest that actually using an API, a third-party service, to handle all of your browsers for you, to provide fast, reliable stealth browsers on demand. You can easily turn them on and off. That would just work out the box. You don't need to maintain them because they're maintained by somebody else. And they have the benefit that they're also integrated with our unblocker and our AI scraping tech as well. So not only are you getting the browser, you're getting sort of advantageous integrations with other tools that are part of the same API. Okay, and we can see it's a lot more simple, traditional in-house. You have to think about orchestration, setup, maintenance, proxy servers, browser farms, and all this stuff. Whereas Zyte API and any API is going to be more abstracted. Okay, the way I talk about this is don't reinvent the wheel, use our efficiencies of scale, right? So one good reason is that using a system like this is efficient. You don't need to hire full-time employees to design and maintain infrastructure. That's not really adding a whole bunch of value to your business. Working quickly, so we're going to see just how quick it is to turn on and scale up and scale down a headless browser farm using Zyte API. But also we have an IDE specifically built for this sort of thing. And we have a pre-made library of actions that you can just call via JSON to help develop and debug your scripts. So that's going to speed you up too. And the last thing to add is, this browser infrastructure is maintained and constantly improved by a dedicated team, right? We've got hundreds of developers who are keeping this at absolutely peak efficiency, doing the browser updates, making sure they're always working fast so that your crawls can stay healthy. And so we think that's the best way to eliminate setup and maintenance, okay? What it means, instead of building all this massive infrastructure, you can simply add these lines that I've got highlighted on screen to your requests, and that is your browser taken care of. You can see browser HTML, true, super easy to do. Actions, you can see an example of a pre-made action there, scroll to bottom. Okay, so that's how you eliminate all of your setup and maintenance. You hand it off to Zyte API, but I don't want to just tell you that. I want to kind of prove it to you and show you how quick and easy it is. So I've got Fernando on the call here who's going to jump on, give you some tech demos, show you some real life use cases live, and really show you exactly how easy it can be. So Fernando, why don't you take over? We'll have a look at your screen and we'll go from there.
All right, here we go. So my name is Fernando. Hello, hello. And I'll be going through a little bit of a demo about how you can use, browser rendering and browser actions to actually get data from pretty much any site that uses that kind of stuff. So let me share my screen here, and we're gonna go right into the Visual Studio Code. Can you guys see it? I believe. Yeah, there we go. All right. So the example here, we're going to be using quotes to scrape.com. Quotes to scrape.com is pretty much a toy a site that we make available for everyone that wants to test out, scraping techniques and how to test out your own spiders. You know, this one in specific, it loads quotes from Goodreads and just displays their authors and the actual quote for you to peruse. In this case, we're gonna have like one, two, three, four, and this screenshot alone, but it can be up to 100. And for this website in specific, we're only going to be able to load this using JavaScript. So first things first, let's see a very small spider here. Let me see if I can. There we go. I believe we can see it better now. So this is a small spider in Scrappy that uses pretty much, standard requests to send a GET request to quotes to scrape.com/scroll and tries to parse the information that is pretty much, the quote information and alter tags and text, right? If we just run this right now, we're not going to get anything. In fact, we didn't get any items because this needs to be rendered for it to yield anything. There is no information on the page. So how do we do this? First off, let's enable Zyte API. Zyte API is pretty simple, and you can get a full tutorial in our tutorial website. There is like a very thorough tutorial on how to create your own Scrappy project, on how to enable everything in your own projects. In this case, it's pretty simple. You just add the add-on here with the Scrappy Zyte API, and you add in your API key, and that's it. You're enabled, pretty much. And you can just add in the meta Zyte API automap and whatever you want from the Zyte API. So in this instance here, we just want the request body. So running this again, saving this, is going to yield us, again, nothing. Unfortunately, we don't have anything there. But if we just change this to browser HTML, save and run, we're going to be rendering. This is going to be a rendered request for Zyte API, and this is going to yield a couple of items. It should take a little bit longer because we are rendering. It's sending it to browser to render, and we're going to get 10 items. So we got 10 items. We got 10 quotes here. So you can see a couple of those over here. Jane Austen, Marilyn Monroe, Albert Einstein. So we got a couple of those already, but we didn't get the whole thing. So why didn't we get this? Because the website itself is rendered in JavaScript and it's also infinite scrolling. So it's not going to load everything at once. It's going to be waiting for the human, or us, to do some kind of action to actually get to the website. So let's take a look at how we can do that with actions. Let me see. Sharing my other screen here. It's gonna go to quotes to scrape. Here we go. So let's refresh this. We should be it's sharing all right? Everyone is looking at quotes to scrape.com here. So basically, this is the website that we're looking at, and there are 10 specific quotes here. So if we go down, it's not going to load just 10, it's going to load a little bit more. And it's going to go and go and go and go and go up until the end of the website, which is in this A Mind Needs Books as a sword needs a whetstone if it is to keep its edge from George R.R. Martin. So how do we get to here? We don't actually have that data in our spider. So let's go to the Zyte API. The Zyte application here. You can get into your own project if you wanted to. In here in tools, you have Zyte IDE right here at the left. That IDE is pretty much where I spend like 50% of my time developing stuff because this is a debugger for your requests. It can act as the way that you can see, what is happening with the request and how you are receiving that request. Let's start the debugger. so you can actually see, the tool working. So basically, this is an UI for you to test out requests with Zyte API. Let's see how to do this. Basically, let's add in the URL that we want to get. So this should be close to scrape.scroll, the slash scroll, and add in that we want the browser HTML and a screenshot of that page, and just hit run. And this is pretty much going to do the exact same thing that we were doing right there at the spider. We're just enabling browser HTML, and we're also enabling a screenshot. And we can see the page here, see what we are rendering. So in this case, we don't have just that. We have the page itself, the screenshot. We have the HTML where we can actually see what we are crawling. So in this case, I believe everything that we need is in a div class quote, and we should have like 10 of those loaded right from the beginning. There we go. 2 out of 10. We're gonna have 10 quotes loaded. So how do we get to everything that is inside this page? There are a lot of options for you to enable and disable inside the Zyte API. They are, JavaScript. You can create spiders with JavaScript enabled or not. You can create spiders with a geolocation specified if you want to get data that is only available in one country. You can add in HTTP options. In browser rendering, this is not going to be available, but without browser, you can add in custom request headers if you want. You can also, in non-rendered requests, you can also change the device that you're sending things from, fingerprints and all that. You can add in the cookies that you want to send or receive. So in this case, let's just enable the cookies just to see what we are receiving. You can change the viewport of the actual browser. So maybe you want to see how this website looks in mobile. You're restricting it to 400 pixels to 200 pixels. See what happens when you render the website. Maybe you want to have things that are happening whenever you enter, whenever you go through a request in a specific session of yours. This is pretty new, but we're not going to be covering this in this webinar. We're going to be covering the actions themselves. So what is a browser action? A browser action is pretty much what Daniel just said before. It is basically human interaction with the page. So whenever you click, whenever you type, whenever you scroll, that's going to be a browser action. And we have a couple of those already defined for you to use. So in this case, we have click, we have double click, we have type, hover, select, scroll to bottom, wait for navigation. Most of those can be directly related to things that you already seen in Puppeteer and Selenium and Playwright. Those are actions that you can do over a page object, right? In this case, what do we want to do? We want to scroll to the bottom of the page, right? There is an actual action here called scroll bottom that has a timeout of 5. It's going to run for at least 5 seconds. Every time, every 1.5 seconds, it's going to scroll right to the bottom of the page. And you can also add in other stuff like, what is the max page height that you want? Maybe you don't want to, go through the entire page. Maybe you just want to go through, 2,000 pixels or something like that. Maybe you just want to scroll 1, 2, 3, 4 times. You can get all of that here. Let's add this action and run it. It should take us a little bit longer, a couple of seconds longer to just go through everything that is going on. And you can see the screenshot has changed. It's not showing the quotes to scrape. It's already in the bottom of the page. And at the bottom of the page, you can see that George R. R. Martin quote, Amaya needs books, and etc. So this means that we got to the end of the page. We got to the end of everything. But did we get all the data that we needed? So we can actually see it here in the elements part where you have the entire HTML. And let's search again. how many div class quotes do we have? And we have 2 out of 100. We have 100 quotes ready to go. So this is a pretty long, string of quotes here. It should be really easy for us to just transplant this to our own spider and just run it. So this is pretty much how you can use actions inside, your own spider, your own IDE. But what else is here in this IDE for you to peruse? This is the basic stuff, the screenshot and the HTML. It's very powerful, but you can also go through what is going on behind the scenes in the IDE, in the Zyte API. So you can have logs of when did something start, when did a load action start, when did a request start loading, band rules, navigation requests. If we detected a ban in our own, backend, when one action started, when one action finished, how much time did that take, and how many bytes did we bring in with that action, how many bytes we bring in with the initial request, how much time did the entire thing take, the entire request took, the go to time, going to the page, actually browsing to the HTML, how much time the actions took, we do already have. Screenshot time, how much time did it take to actually screenshot the page. Browser startup and browser close time, which is basically going very, very deep in performance reviews of your own requests. And you can also get the raw response. This is what you would have when you curl directly your request to the Zyte API. You would receive a JSON with everything that you just scrawled, with the browser HTML, with the screenshot, and a log of the actions that you just took. And you can also go inside every single request that was made while rendering that page. And not just the requests, but also the headers of the response and the request. You can also copy directly anything that happened here. You're loading a font, you're loading an API that is loading the quotes. You can copy that to your own spider and just try it out. Let's see what that looks like here. Format. Oh, sorry about that. For format document. There we go. So this is pretty much what we did behind the scenes to get those quotes. We are calling the API with an HTTP response body true, with a method of get, with custom request headers. And here we have also the experimental request that we just added to, just ask for requests. So there we go. It's pretty much this is the way that you would go into the debugging of a website and just see what are the what are the endpoints that are giving us the data, that are giving us what we need, what we actually need. And that's pretty much it. With this tool, with everything that we just discussed, I didn't go anywhere near, deploying anything, deploying Selenium infrastructure to render my pages, or go to Playwright, or go to I don't know, anything that is related to JavaScript rendering. Of course, we could do that using other actions here, like evaluate, where we just execute a JavaScript on the fly. But in this case, we didn't need it. I didn't need to go deep anywhere. I got that data using fairly advanced techniques for, someone that wouldn't understand the overall scraping process. And right now, how to finish it off? How can we just transplant this back to the spider? This was all done using the UI, right? There is also a way to get everything that we just done to JSON. And this can be transplanted directly to your request and curl to the Zyte API, or you can copy and paste this. Let me go to the share here, to the browser crawler that we just had. So this is this is the way that you do this in Scrappy. So you have the Zyte API automap, which is where you add in everything that you want for to Zyte API to do. And instead of having browser HTML here, we just copy and paste. Of course, it's a JSON. We need to just get this true to true, capitalize it. Let's remove the screenshot because we actually don't need it for this specific part. And let's remove the URL because we are already defining the URL in the request. And this should yield us a spider that would get everything, that would get the entire website just like that. It should take a little bit longer, but let's see if we can get 100 items with this spider. There we go. And items scraped is equal to 100. And there we go. Really quickly, we just got through a hurdle that many people go through with a lot of effort, with just adding a couple of actions here and having all the items that we needed. And I believe that's it. Back to you, Daniel.
Awesome. Thanks, Fernando. That's really cool. It's great to see just how quick how you can prove everything I just said, which is always nice. Super quick. Didn't touch any serious code. Didn't touch any architecture. Didn't have to call your DevOps, anybody like that, and it just worked out the box. That's absolutely fantastic. So I hope everybody can see. I'm just going to share my screen. You have to stop sharing yours. My screen is loading. Lovely jubbly. Thank you. So I hope you can see that we've activated the headless in any project. We've done the actions in the IDE, and that it was super easy. And that's how we kind of deliver on this promise of eliminating setup and maintenance of browser infrastructure. Basically, we take all the heavy lifting away for you and just let you access it with JSON. It's all fully overrideable, fully customizable. So for those edge cases where you might want to do that, you still can. Okay, so of course, please do feel free to sign up for a free trial if you don't already have one. You get $5 with every free trial, which equates to many thousands of requests. The docs are, of course, there. We'll share all the links. Please do join us on the Discord. I know Fernando hangs out on there, so you can pick his brain. And actually, there's thousands of developers on there who can help you as well. But not just with Zyte, actually, with Scrapy and a lot of different stuff. Cool, thank you. We'll share this recording with everybody, make it available online. But for now, I hope you found this useful, entertaining, interesting. Hope you learned a little bit. We do these all the time, and they're often published as workshops on the Discord, where we have discussions about them and all that sort of thing. But for now, thank you for attending. Happy data hunting, and we will see you on the next one.